So Trump's saying, you want to bitch and complain and turn every NFL event into a big pity party and claim blacks are more oppressed than they've ever been and all this other crap, when these are some of the most rich and powerful black folks out there, hundreds of millions of dollars, in many cases apiece.
You know what I think? I think you've given up.
Given up on what?
On the ideal of an integrated America, the dream of Martin Luther King. I think you've given up. This is not, I'm not trying to be a smart aleck now. I'm telling you honestly that I think you've given up.
If I may respond, the Kerner Commission, established by President Johnson in 1967, said that there were two societies, one black, one white, one rich, one poor. And the Kerner Commission gave specific recommendations that had to be followed if America believed in integration. 20 years after that, a group of scientists got together to see what the progress was. And the progress is
backward.
That we have a larger middle class, but the masses of black people have gone backward. And the country is not only separate and unequal, but in worse condition today than it was then. So I don't think, Mr.
You make my
Donahue, you should put it on me that I've given up. America has never believed in integration. Never. Never.
Mr. Farrakhan, I can't really stand up and jump up and down and say, shame on you for this feeling. I really can't. The evidence is overwhelming. Overwhelming. 1 in 4 black males either in jail or under the tutelage of the prison system.
The economic and physical conditions for black men and women in America have declined precipitously, especially since the crash of 2008. Yet most black politicians and intellectuals remain delivery systems for neoliberalism. They blame the victims, those for whom jobs and opportunities do not exist, even as the corporate state orchestrates the largest transfer of wealth upwards in American history. Black apologists for the system call their demands for black personal responsibility tough love. But this stance, music to the ears of the white elite, is morally indefensible. It ignores the harsh reality visited on poor people of color. It ignores the entrenched institutional racism that makes sure the poor remain poor. Courtiers come in different colors in America, but their function is always the same. They are hedonists of power. And if the poor, especially poor people of color, expect to have a voice and agency, they will have to oust many of their own established leaders and embrace a new black radicalism. Anya Parampil examines the crisis that has engulfed African Americans in the United States.
It's been dubbed the new Jim Crow, a separate but equal economic system which has left Black Americans far behind their counterparts, despite perceived images of equal opportunity. According to Brandeis University, over the past 25 years, the wealth gap between Black and white Americans has nearly tripled. And the numbers speak for themselves. In 2013, the median net worth of white households was $142,000. For Black households, that number was $11,000, meaning Black households were worth less than 10% of white ones. According to the U.S. Census Bureau's most recent data, 41.7% of Black Americans own their homes. Comparatively, 71.5% of non-Hispanic whites own theirs. So how might this disparity be possible? Well, it all boils back to basic income and employment, which, you guessed it, is heavily divided along racial lines. The Bureau of Labor Statistics put the unemployment rate overall most recently at 4.9%. Yet, if you're looking at just African Americans, that number nearly doubles to 8.6%, and is likely much higher, considering it doesn't count people who have given up looking for a job, are in jail or in prison. But even if you have a job and are Black in America, you're likely making less than your white counterparts. According to data analyzed by the Economic Policy Institute, the median household income for Black Americans is $35,000. For white families, it's $60,000. Perhaps considering these numbers, it's no surprise that a recent Pew report found only 8% of Black Americans believe enough changes have been made in the United States to grant Blacks equal rights. 42% remain hopeful those changes will one day be made. However, 43%, slightly more, believe those changes will never come.
Professor Eddie.
The National Urban League has recently published its annual report on the state of Black America. The League is one of the oldest research organizations in the Black community, documenting the levels of national oppression and economic exploitation. Its first report was released back in 1976, and it was titled Locked Out, A Message to the Next President, documenting the political and economic struggles that Blacks faced at the hands of those who were in the White House and on Wall Street. RT correspondent Ashley Banks gives us insight into what's revealed in the 2016 report.
African Americans remain oppressed and locked out in the U.S. Now, that's according to the National Urban League's recent findings in its annual report on the state of Black America. In 1976, the League released Locked Out, Education, Jobs, and Justice, a message to the next president, which provided evidence to suggest African Americans remain oppressed in the U.S. Now, here we are 40 years later, and despite the fact the first African-American president was elected in 2008 and again in 2012, the fundamental problems facing the Black population are still unresolved, 151 years after slavery was abolished. The League says overall, African-Americans do not have full equality, but only 72% of what whites possess. According to the report, there hasn't been much progress towards economic equality. The Black unemployment rate is still twice the rate for whites. Compared to 40 years ago, the income gap has remained unchanged, resting at 60%, and the home ownership rate gap has grown 6%, now standing at 59%. Now, on the other hand, there has been slow progress in reducing the Black poverty rate. According to the most recent estimates, the Black poverty rate is now 2.4% lower than in 1976. And the League also stated over 1/4 of the African-American population remains poverty-stricken. The worst state in the U.S. for African-American unemployment is Illinois. More specifically, in the city of Chicago, a lot of African Americans are faced with poverty, inequality, and joblessness, giving way to why crime is so high in the city. The Economic Policy Institute conducted a study during the first quarter of 2016. The unemployment rate among Blacks living in Illinois was 14.1%. Now that's up from 13.1% during the fourth quarter of 2015. Which was the nation's worst African-American unemployment rate. The League's report also provides data that takes a critical look at the lack of progress made during 2 terms of the Obama administration. In 2008 and 2012, African-Americans voted overwhelmingly for President Obama, securing his 2 terms in office. The League suggests no matter who is elected to the White House and Congress for 2017, the oppression and exploitation will not go away. In Washington, Ashley Banks, RT.
When I walk into a television station and my brothers are around me, they say to me, Farrakhan, can you tell me why you have all of this security? Are you afraid? But what's under that is, nigga, who do you think you are? If the Pope comes in with his security, it's all right. If the president comes in with his security, it's all right. If Margaret Thatcher moves with his security, her security, it's all right. Because white people have value, but no black person should have security. But I am to black people what the Pope is to white people. If you leave me alone and let me teach, I will be to white people what the Pope could never be. We go to school and send our babies to school to learn white supremacy. That's why our children today don't want school. And you black athletes, don't come to us telling us why we should stay in school. Right. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes, sir. Tell us why we should get the right kind of education to stay in school. Because if it makes out of us what it's made out of you, we don't want it. We don't want our people to be modern slaves with big muscles, have a better relationship to a basketball than we have to our wives and children. Our minds have been ruined. A people that don't know their names, language, culture, religion, God, have been turned inside out because this society robbed us of the knowledge of self. This world did to us what the ruffians did to Hiram. This world hit us in the head. This world robbed us. This world makes sure that we don't rise. Their teachers watch our babies, and when they show signs of genius, They put the wrong word in their fertile minds to turn them backward. This word, politically, doesn't want to see a black man be a black man. They like Mayor Dinkins. They like Governor Wilder. They said these are the new politicians. They are non-threatening. How can a black man be a black man in white America and be non-threatening? That means he ain't no black man at all. White folk are threatened by any black man who has an ounce of courage. What we've got to do is fall in love with self, learn to respect self, and forget denominations of religion or political parties or the things that divide us, and accentuate the things that pull us together as a family. Should go to America and say to America, look, we don't want welfare. We don't think we should live in poor houses or be homeless since we built your country and fought, bled, and died to maintain the country. America, you owe us something. You to dole it out in welfare checks. If you give us what you owe us, we'll take it from there. But wait a minute. Will America do that? We don't know. But America jailed in concentration camps thousands of Japanese Americans, confiscated their property. And now Congress says America treated the Japanese Americans wrong and has okayed several billions of dollars to be paid to the Japanese in reparations. The Germans recognized the evil that they did to the Jews. And right now, they're paying reparations to Israel. East Germany, wanting to unite with West Germany, said that in order to unite with West Germany, they had to repent and pay Israel reparations. Look at what they said. We ask the Jews of the world to forgive us. We ask the people of Israel to forgive us for the hypocrisy and hostility of official East German policy toward Israel and for the persecution and the degradation of Jewish citizens also after 1945 in our country. We declare our willingness to contribute as much as possible to the healing of mental and physical sufferings of survivors and to provide just compensation for material losses. Isn't that wonderful? Let's applaud the East Germans. That's a wonderful thing that the East Germans did. Now let's rewrite this a little bit. And let's put it in the hands of America. Wouldn't it be wonderful if America said, we ask the blacks of the world to forgive us? Wouldn't that be something? We ask the black people of America to forgive us for our hypocrisy and the hostility of official United States policy toward black people, and for the persecution and the degradation of black people whom we call citizens even after 1863, when we said they were free. And we declare our willingness to contribute as much as possible to the healing of mental and physical suffering of these survivors, and to provide just compensation for material losses. Now, let's add up what they owe us. Let's add it up. Let's add it up. You got your computers? Let's start in Africa. According to W.E.B. Du Bois, a conservative estimate of black lives lost in the Middle Passage was from 50 to 100 million black lives. Now, we don't mean to minimize the Jewish Holocaust. 6 million lives is a lot of lives. But are you telling me that 6 million white lives are more valuable than 100 million black lives? I know that's not what you're saying. You can't be saying that. No. For the Bible says, a life or a life. Well, well, well. If 100 million of us lost our lives in the Middle Passage, add it up. What is one black life worth? Add it up. 300 years working from can't see morning to can't see night, for no pay. 300 years working millions of slaves for nothing. Add it up. Add it up. Add up the killing of our fathers and mothers after mating them like animals, then taking the children and naming us after them, stripping us of our language, our God, our religion, our minds. Add it up. Add it up. Think about it. Black folk fought in the Revolutionary War that made America free from England, yet we not free. Add it up. We fought in the War of 1812. Add it up. We fought in the Civil War. 400,000 blacks on the side of the North and the South. Some fighting to preserve the old South. Others fighting to preserve the Union.
of black lives were lost in that war. Add it up.
Go ahead.
The destruction of our families.
Yeah, think about it.
Add it up.
That's right.
You brought us into religion, not to make us closer to Jesus, but to turn us inside out in Jesus' name. You know Jesus was no white man. But the Bible said, look at him. The Bible said he had hair like lamb's wool, and he had feet like grass burned in the oven. But you made us white man, destroyed our love for ourselves, and it up. We fought in the Spanish-American War. We helped America steal Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California from the Mexicans. They didn't offer us nothing. Add it up. World War I came. You got in trouble. Black soldiers win. You got a victory over Germany. We got nothing but more hell. Add it up. World War II came along. Hitler got started. We joined the army. Well, if you joined on your own. Baby. When you joined the army and signed your name, Willis Jackson, Henry Morgan, Larry Higginbotham, you signed the wrong name. You were out of your mind. Didn't know who you were. Somebody took advantage of you and sent you to fight for your enemies. I said, add it up. Add it up. We left our bodies in Normandy Beach, in Palermo, in Rome, in Naples, in Sicily. We left our bodies on the streets of Paris, in Belgium. Boy, add it up. We joined the war. They used us in Hawaii, in Bataan, in Corregidor, in the Solomon Islands, in Iwo Jima. We lost our lives fighting for America. And after the war was over, America rebuilt Germany. Now the West German economy is the strongest in all Europe. We rebuilt Japan. Now the Japanese are world leaders, but black people who helped to win the war. They're homeless in Atlanta, homeless in Chicago, homeless in Detroit, homeless in Boston, in the streets looking for a job, looking for a handout. We helped you win, but you offered us nothing. I said, add it up. Add it up. We developed leaders to help us. Marcus Garvey came and talked to us. But here in Georgia,
Come on.
you trumped up charges against him. And you brought him into court and you lied on him. And you sent him to prison unjustly. Then you deported him and broke his movement. And only later did we learn that Garvey was a good man. He had a good movement. He had a good program. But you destroyed it all. Add it up. Add it in the 1960s. Black folk began to move. We had CORE, we had SNCC, we had the NAACP, we had the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, we had the Black Panthers, we had the Nation of Islam. All of these brothers and sisters fighting for the liberation of black people. But there in Washington, D.C., the government of America started plotting against our leaders, and we lost Whitney Young off the coast of Africa under suspicious circumstances. We lost Medgar Evers. They broke up CORE. They broke up SNCC. They broke up the organization called US. They jailed the leaders of the Republic of New Africa. They murdered Martin Luther King. They weakened the NAACP and the Urban League. Everything that fought for justice for us, they tore it up and tore it down. I say, add it up. America owes the black man. Add it up. What is the life of Martin Luther King worth? What is the life of Malcolm X worth? What is the life of our leaders worth? What is the life of Louis Farrakhan worth? You want me dead? But I say you don't want that. You don't really want that. If you know what I know, you don't want that. The way God looks at this thing, the present generation of whites, they didn't do this to us. The present generation of whites are innocent of what their great-grandfathers did. But you're in a privileged position because of what your fathers did. And we're in a hell of a condition because of what your fathers did. So if you, the present generation of whites, want to escape what is justly due, then you got to do the right thing. You got to do justice by the black man. What is the right thing? You got to apologize for what you did. You got to repent for what you did. You gotta say, we've been wrong. Now we know we don't want you. We don't like you. But we'll give you justice. Now what does justice look like? If you add it up, if you add it up, white folks, you're going to have to give us the whole damn country. The whole thing belongs to the oppressed. If you add it up, we're not asking for the whole thing. Although we deserve the whole thing. Just give us some of it. And let us go to build a nation for ourselves. Since you don't want us, don't keep us here and kill us. Let us go and let us build a new reality. In the name of God, let us build for God. Well, and what if we don't do that? It's your thing. refuses to submit as he killed Pharaoh and his people, as he destroyed Babylon and Sodom and Gomorrah. And he warns you that it was water the first time, but fire next time. You better add it up. So I thank you, brothers and sisters, for a marvelous evening. May Allah bless you, and I wish you peace. Assalamu alaikum.
بسم الرب الخالق الكريم. Begin all things with the illustrious name of the Sustainer, the generous Creator. In the very beginning was the Word, La ilaha illallah.